On June 4, 2018, Microsoft paid $7.5 billion for GitHub and made a promise in the same breath. Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, said it directly. GitHub will retain its developer-first ethos, operate independently, and remain an open platform. 28 million developers, 85 million repositories. One promise, they broke all three. Within hours of the announcement, developers started moving their code to GitLab. Thousands of repositories per hour, not because they panicked, because they had watched Microsoft make this exact move before, with Hotmail, with Skype, with Nokia, and they knew how the story ended. They were right. By 2025, GitHub no longer operated independently. Its CEO was gone. Its terms of service gave Microsoft the right to train AI on your code by default. And the platform that Satya Nadella called the home for all developers had been folded into Microsoft's CoreAI division, a product team, not a community. The developers who saw it coming moved their code the same day. The ones who stayed are still paying for it. If you want to see exactly how Microsoft dismantled every promise it made, hit subscribe. This story gets worse before it gets better. To understand how Microsoft failed this badly, you need to go back to April 10, 2008. Tom Preston Werner, Chris Wanstrath, PJ Hyatt, and Scott Chacon launched GitHub on that date. The platform went into beta on January 1st of that year. They built the whole thing in their spare time. No venture capital, no corporate backing, just 4 developers who thought the tools for sharing code were broken and decided to fix them. The early numbers were modest. In the first year, roughly 46,000 users. Not a rocket ship, not yet. But developers talked, and developers trusted other developers more than they trusted any company. By 2011, GitHub had crossed 1 million users. By 2013, 3 million. By 2018, the year Microsoft came knocking, GitHub had 28 million developers and hosted over 85 million repositories, the largest code hosting platform on Earth. You could lose your job and still have your GitHub profile. That meant something. Microsoft knew it. That's exactly why they paid $7.5 billion for it. In 2015, GitHub raised a $250 million round from Sequoia Capital at a $2 billion valuation. They stayed independent. By 2018, the cash was running low and the pressure was real. GitHub needed a path forward. Microsoft offered one. It looked like a partnership. It was an acquisition. And for a while, a long while, it worked. Better than anyone expected. Here's how big it actually got. At the time of the acquisition, GitHub controlled roughly 70% of the global code hosting market. GitLab, Bitbucket, and every other competitor combined didn't come close. Microsoft made the right moves early. In January 2019, GitHub announced that free accounts would get unlimited private repositories. Before that, private repos required a paid plan. It was a real tangible improvement. Developers noticed. The narrative started to shift. Maybe Microsoft was different this time. Maybe they actually meant it. Then came GitHub Actions in 2019. Enterprise customers stopped looking elsewhere. The platform was the whole pipeline now, not just where code lived, but where it moved, tested, and shipped. By 2020, GitHub had 56 million developers. By 2022, 83 million. By early 2023, it crossed 100 million. 100 million developers on a single platform. That's more than the entire population of Germany, all of them trusting the same company with their work. By 2023, GitHub had crossed $1 billion in annual recurring revenue. By 2024, $2 billion. In 6 years under Microsoft, the platform had gone from a cash-burning independent to one of the most profitable developer tools businesses on Earth. Satya Nadella said in 2021, GitHub is the home for all developers. He wasn't wrong, it was. And Microsoft had built something extraordinary on top of the trust that 4 developers had spent a decade earning. Then they launched Copilot. 100 million developers. That's not a typo. And here's what nobody saw coming. The tool Microsoft built to help those developers would become the instrument they used to extract value from them, without asking permission, without attribution, and without paying a single person whose code they used to build it. Subscribe if you want the story they didn't put in the press release. New video every week. Here's the decision that changed everything. And once you hear it, you'll understand why hundreds of thousands of developers walked away and never came back. In June 2021, Microsoft launched GitHub Copilot as a technical preview, an AI coding assistant trained on billions of lines of code from public repositories. It went generally available in June 2022 at $10 a month. What they told you. Copilot was trained on publicly available code to help developers write better software faster. What they actually did. Microsoft trained a commercial AI product on tens of millions of open-source repositories, code written under licenses like MIT, GPL, and Apache, without attribution, without compensation, and without asking the people who wrote it. The reaction was immediate. Developers started noticing that Copilot was reproducing their exact code, not similar code, their code, verbatim, without a license notice, without their name, just their work, laundered through an AI and sold back to them for $10 a month. You already know how this ends. In November 2022, attorney Matthew Butterick filed a class action lawsuit in the Northern District of California. The case, Doe versus GitHub, Inc., Microsoft, and OpenAI. The core argument, GitHub and Microsoft had violated open source licenses on a massive scale, stripping attribution from code that legally required it and profiting from work they had no right to commercialize. Matthew Butterick said, GitHub Copilot is only possible because of open source developers. They deserve to be compensated. Microsoft's attempt to build the world's most helpful coding assistant became the single greatest breach of trust in open source history. By November 2023, Copilot had crossed 1 million paid subscribers across 190 countries. By early 2024, 50,000 enterprise customers. The revenue was real, the lawsuit was still pending, and the developers whose code had trained the model were getting nothing. Imagine Ryan, a senior back-end engineer in Austin, Texas. He had spent 4 years contributing to open-source Python libraries, thousands of lines of carefully documented MIT-licensed code, the kind of work you do because you believe in the community, not because anyone's paying you. In 2022, he opened Copilot and watched it suggest his own function, his variable names, his comments, his logic, offered to a paying subscriber who had never heard of him. He filed a complaint. He joined the class action. He moved his personal projects off GitHub entirely. He was one of the first. He would not be the last. But here's what most people missed. The Copilot lawsuit was just the opening act. The real move, the one that would affect every single GitHub user on the planet, was still 3 years away, and Microsoft would make it in broad daylight. That was the mistake. What happened next was the punishment. The numbers are worse than you think. The numbers don't lie. In February 2023, GitHub laid off approximately 300 employees, 10% of its entire workforce, in a single announcement. The same month, Microsoft cut 10,000 jobs across the broader company. 2 cuts, 1 month. The independence promise had a shelf life. It lasted about 4 years. Here's what the collapse actually looked like in numbers. GitHub's free user base, the 20 million American developers alone who had built careers on the platform, was now subject to terms they never agreed to. Copilot went from 1 million paid subscribers in November 2023 to 4.7 million by 2025, a 370% increase in under 2 years. Not because developers suddenly loved Microsoft, because Microsoft had made GitHub the only practical option for teams that needed AI-assisted development and then charged them for the privilege. GitHub's total revenue went from $1 billion in 2023 to $2 billion in 2024, 100% growth in 12 months, built on the backs of developers who had trusted the platform since before Microsoft owned it. Then the independence died completely. In August 2025, Microsoft moved GitHub into its CoreAI group. CEO Thomas Dohmke, who had spent 4 years trying to maintain the fiction of independence, announced he would leave by the end of the year. Platform that Satya Nadella had promised would operate independently was now a product team inside a Microsoft AI division, not a community. A cost center with a revenue target, $2 billion in annual revenue. That's more than Spotify paid for all of its podcast acquisitions combined. Microsoft didn't build that number. They extracted it from a community that had been told, in writing, that they were partners. Then came April 24th, 2026. GitHub updated its terms of service. The new language was buried in a privacy statement update. Starting that date, unless you actively opted out, GitHub and its affiliates including Microsoft, had the right to use your Copilot interactions, your prompts, your code context, and the suggestions you accepted or rejected to train and improve AI models. Copilot business and enterprise customers were excluded. They had contracts. They had lawyers. Free, Pro, and Pro Plus users opted in by default. Imagine Chris, a freelance developer in Nashville, Tennessee. He had used GitHub since 2012. 14 years. He had never paid for Copilot business. He opened his email in March 2026 and read the update. His prompts, his code context, his work, now training Microsoft's AI by default. Unless he found the settings page and turned it off. He turned it off. He started migrating. The platform he had trusted for 14 years had just made him a product, and Microsoft made it permanent in the one place most developers never look, the fine print, design decision. The one thing you can do right now: go to your GitHub settings, find the Copilot section, and turn off data collection for AI training. It takes 45 seconds. Most people have never done it. If you already did that, you were right. They were counting on you not noticing. Millions of developers didn't notice until it was already done. Sound familiar? Drop a comment. Have you already moved your personal projects off GitHub? Or are you still there? And if you're still there, what's keeping you?